Welcome to our podcast, Plans to Places, where we explore the critical dynamics that impact the built environment. Today, specifically, we're going to be focusing on sport facility engineering. I've got with me a couple really great experts that work across the country, and I'm really excited to introduce them to you today. So welcome, Jeff and John.
Thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.
Jeff Bresee, will you please introduce yourself to our audience? Let them know a little bit about your background and how you got here.
Sure. It's quite a story, but I'll try to shorten it into, in the year 2000, I moved to Texas to be a water engineer, and instead stumbled into a place that was doing synthetic turf field at their stadium in Abilene. Didn't know that, number one, the significance of sports in Texas, but also the significance of that product in a market that has vast reaches, and didn't understand that if you do one something that's really at the very beginning of its run as an industry, well, you can become an expert organically. That happened to me. Didn't really plan on this, but I loved it enough that I just followed it, and it's taken me 25 years to where we are now, having done them all that time in hundreds of fields.
Okay, so you focus specifically on sport facility engineering, and we're going to get into that here just shortly. Who else have you brought with you?
So I brought John Valastro. He follows me everywhere I go. No, I'm kidding. We're good friends. He was one of the clients I had along the journey. And after he had retired as being a superintendent of schools, he liked what we did enough. He couldn't stay away from the fun. He wanted to be part of it as well. But I'll let him tell a little bit of that.
What's your story?
Well, I joined the team, like I said, shortly after I retired. But I am not an engineer, and that is not my background. Mine is in public education. I was a teacher, coach, moved up into administration, became athletic director, and then a superintendent of schools. So the background that I brought was sports. The sports have been a big part of my life ever since I was in high school. I played football. I was on a state championship team. 30 years later, I had the opportunity to actually coach in the state championship game, won the state championship. And so that's my background. But again, the passion for sports has always been there. And I think the reason Jeff kept calling me is I kept sending him people because I believed in what he was doing. And so, again, we struck up a relationship, and here we are, for me, 7 years later, still working with CEI.
Well, I think that is amazing. I love the fact that you have come from education, and also as an athletic director, you've got that solid perspective of what they're working with, but it also keeps close to your heart what the purpose of sport facility engineering is, which is to turn out really great athletes. So let's talk a little bit about how you guys do that. So whenever we talk about sport field engineering, what all does that cover?
About 50 times more than people think. From the day I walked into it, when Abilene ISD walked in the door and said, we need an engineer for our field, the instant reaction was, we're engineers. We don't know that we can really help you. It's not our expertise. What could we possibly do for you? They didn't know either. They just said, well, there's a school in Dallas who put 2 of these in last year, and one of them didn't even make it a year before it was lost. It's already in a lawsuit and being demoed and rebuilt, and we don't want that to happen to us. They said, you make sure our foundation is right, you make sure our drainage is right, let us handle the turf. And I'm like, oh, well, we can do that. That's what we do. By the time I was done with one project, I was never wanting to do another project again. It was the biggest circus I'd been in, and I'd feel like I'd been kind of manipulated by a lot of the turf companies that knew that they knew stuff about the projects and that we didn't, and really thought that I would just go back to my normal civil engineering life. Well, the next year, Canyon ISD and Andrews ISD called, said, you've got to do our engineering as well because we want what Abilene has. I said, no. So I don't want to be involved in that. And then they kind of looked at me funny, and then I said, unless we can do this differently, I've got to know enough about the whole project, the turf and the drainage and the water and all the components, so that it's not kind of this question mark how it's going to work out. It's going to take me 6 months of research, really being able to write a performance spec where I know enough to control the whole project. It's going to cost a lot of money. And I kind of thought they'd be like, oh, well, never mind that. No, they didn't care. They said, fine, do it. But they were willing to pay some extra money. And once we did that, I learned just how much engineering there is in sports. There's as much engineering in a synthetic turf field as there is in anything else in civil engineering. You can go build highways on less technology. And it's also not just because of the nuance of the product, but also how precise everything has to be, and then the level of expectation. It's all about expectation. Sports surfacing, everyone expects 100% perfection, everywhere. So it's just made us learn that we have to almost create a form of engineering, which we've done. It's been 25 years of creating what we call sports engineering, because it wasn't just turf. It started off with turf. Everywhere I went then to talk to a school about a turf and a turf and a turf, I'm kind of looking over like, why is their track falling apart? Everywhere I go, these tracks are crap. They're falling apart. Well, I learned we had like this industry for, I don't know, the 70s, 80s, 90s of a lot of construction going on without any engineering, or virtually no engineering. Just contractor goes and does what he normally does and builds what he normally builds, and it ends up like what works or it doesn't. Well, that's not what you want. You want a project and you want it to be custom so that you know it's going to work. And so same thing, when someone asked me to do a track project, I had to do that same research. And project after project, we had to learn, we've got to take what normally is in the world of construction, what normally is in the world of engineering, and we've got to modify everything. We have to custom fit it so that it actually works with these sports facilities. And so then we've done that from turf over to tracks, and from tracks over to tennis courts and sports courts and pickleball courts, and you name it. We've had to kind of develop an engineering around these type of projects over the years.
I do think there probably is a lot of misconception about the work that would go in, the engineering that would go in underneath the field, and like what they would really accomplish from that. I think one of the stories that really sticks out to me is a project that you guys did in Texas that had a severe flood event. Their field went underwater, but because of the way that you guys engineered it, that field was back up and operational within about 24 hours. And that high school facility was able to operate as a community base so that they could get supplies out to the community as they were dealing through that flood event. And I think it's so important to cities as they're building up and they're competing for students and trying to give kids the best opportunity that they can. I think that increases the competition.
Well, to piggyback off of that part of it, we were one of those schools that had a flood event. I think you might be talking about Vidor ISD after a hurricane, which is a whole new story, or another story. But for us,
he was in Lumberton, but
I was at Lumberton ISD, and we had all kinds of issues. First of all, when Jeff came in, it wasn't just the turf field, but he had mentioned tracks. Well, we had a track that had cracks in it, 1.5 inches wide, and my background, summer jobs, was construction. And so I had a little bit of background on how to build things, but the whole key is, why is this track falling apart? Something underground must be wrong. Well, that's where I knew that I needed an expert, and his expertise was the base. So we brought him in and we had that conversation about what can we do to make sure that this thing doesn't separate. I was a track coach for many years, and in Texas, the big issue was tracks were failing after 6 months of going down. And people just didn't understand that in Texas, the ground moves. And it doesn't just move a little bit. A 1/2 inch can cause a 100-meter line to look like a wave. And so we had that issue. But so I knew that I had to have a partner in this to guide me. And that was a huge thing about Jeff, is he already had the foundation of what's going on with these foundations. And so when we brought him in, then we said, okay, you understand the track, but what about our field? I mean, we go down 8 inches, we're hitting water. We got a problem. So it's the base, it's the water level, it's how to get water moving, which engineers do quite well. But when you add it with sports surfaces, you got to move a lot of water pretty quick. And so to add to the story is we had about a 3-inch rain at 11:30 in the morning, and practice starts at 3:30 in the afternoon. Well, by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I took off my boots and I could walk on the turf field because the rain event lasted for about 45 minutes to an hour. It was just a downpour. And within an hour of the rain, I could take off my boots and I could literally walk on the turf without hardly getting my socks wet. That was amazing. So moving water and understanding that you have to have a great foundation was everything that we always talk about.
I do think engineering is everything. One of the things that I know that can be a real challenge for you guys is oftentimes with school properties, people are donating property. It's not always the property that is the most in the best condition for development. So how have you, are there any projects that come to mind, Jeff, where you've helped a school like recapture that property value of that land?
Sure. So this all kind of ties together. Going back to Abilene, we're going to handle the water in the soil. Learned that the water in the soil is, everything else is really paint. It's kind of like if we build a car, the water in the soil are the metal and everything else. The surfaces are like the paint you put on to make it look pretty, but if the car isn't right, the paint isn't going to be right. So at the same time, we had to go develop a kind of engineering. We had to develop sports engineering. And there really wasn't many resources to go to. Every time I would go to find a resource, I learned it was kind of created by a contractor. And in my opinion, it was kind of cooked in their favor. Something that was designed to last long enough. Well, we didn't want anything. We want our clients to have something that's going to last 100 years, especially when it comes to like a foundation. And so we had to just little by little, project by project, learning our way through projects. Abilene was probably the 7th or 8th field in the nation. By the time and that was like the year 2000, 2005 comes along and Hurricane Katrina comes along, floods New Orleans, and Tulane University said, hey, we need an expert in here. All of our fields have been lost. And I go in, let's get a look at it. And the standard of design in this whole industry, this cookie cutter that kind of the industry wants to say, let's just go build the same thing everywhere. They put a pond liner down that the 100% impermeable, because the idea is we don't want the rainwater to make it to our soils, getting our soils to be soft and causing all these problems under a field. Well, that's a great idea on half of the problem. It works great if only the water comes from this direction, but it had zero taking into account, well, what if the water comes from underneath? And so in a flood, of course, the groundwater comes to the surface. By definition, the flooded water will push the groundwater up to the surface and the two come together. And now if you were one of those fields that did a traditional design, you're done. You can't ever get that water out from underneath the liner. Happened also in Katrina, not Katrina, but also Harvey across a lot of Houston. So when I was helping Tulane back in 2005, I said, okay, well, let's redo your fields, but we can't go back and do them the same way we did them, where we're just going to have a problem again. And we had to come up with a design that can go underwater, it can breathe, and then when you're done, you clean the field off, and the base, when all the drainage is still be in place. Did that very successfully, did that all across the state of Louisiana for lots of universities, some in Arkansas, different places. John came along, I don't know, I guess about 2012, so about 7 years later. We'd even handled somewhere there's springs coming up under water. We were learning project after project what to look for, what to be cautious of, and whether you've got to use this waterproof design or not. Because again, this costs quite a bit more to make a field waterproof from all directions than it does to only make it waterproof from one direction. But at the same time, I don't want to go building this for everybody, because to be honest, 8 out of 10 people don't need this.
Don't need that, right.
You just got to understand. His thing was our water table just naturally happens to be about that far underground. So obviously if we would have put a big tarp across the ground, that moisture is going to come up, and there was no way to solve it that way. We had to work with them to do the more breathable, waterproof, way of doing it. So again, just project by project, little by little, we've developed what we've developed, just finding out what works and what doesn't, and then making sure that we can apply what we need to whatever the client's needs are. You brought up about recapturing property. It's actually more common with cities.
Okay.
Where do we build our parks?
Oh, yeah.
We like to build parks by rivers and lakes. Well, rivers and lakes, just by definition, are almost always in floodplains. So now that a lot of cities want to go and convert their parks over to turf, I'm looking at them like, you do realize you're in the floodplain here. We can't do the normal design because there's going to be a year where your fields go underwater and you don't want to totally lose those fields at that time and have to go rebuild them. So lots of opportunities to apply the technology to, and I think that's going to be increasing in the future. Schools I've seen don't build in floodplains too often. They do or they don't. Cities often do, just because of the dynamic of a city and where we usually go realign our parks. So able to help them have those fields they want to have without having to move the whole location, and in a way they can feel comfortable that let the weather do what it will, we can get through that without total loss there.
Well, it sounds like, so what's a typical life? Is that a fair question to say? Is there a typical life of a field?
That's a great question. This industry has an 8-year warranty on all of the products, a minimum. Some have 10-year warranties. So that's a really, really good warranty. The misnomer in the industry is, oh my gosh, plastic, beautiful green grass, it's magic. I don't have to do anything to it. I just buy it and I use it all as much as I want for 10 years. And no, that's not true at all. If there's, 10 parts of maintenance for a grass field, well, there's only about, a half of a part of maintenance for a turf field. So there's literally 20 times less maintenance to have a turf field than a grass field, but it's not zero. And very important, everyone has a turf field. Once a year, you get your turf company to come re-level the infill. Because what happens to fields that burn out early is the infill flows like water through that plastic. It's granular BBs that move, and as you move it, it moves from the center to the sides. And as your infill in the middle goes down, 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 well, that's where the bulk of the cleats and the traffic is happening. And once you can have those cleats, instead of playing up here on these rubber and staying away from the backing, this gets too thin, those cleats go through, they hit that backing, your turf is...
And then you're wearing out your turf.
So you can see where his is very technical. So from a standpoint as a school official, as a superintendent or principal or athletic director, part of what I do is come in and educate. Education is a big part of this. Coaches want to coach, but then they do need to realize that there needs to be some maintenance, and you also need to budget for it. That's another thing schools need to be aware of. If you're going to have these facilities, yes, there's less overall maintenance, but it's going to have a cost. So you're going to have some infill redone every 2 years, 3 years. You're going to have to continually brush it, at least depending on the use. Because again, you will have general use, plethora of use, and overuse.
Okay.
Because everybody in that community, from Pee Wee football to your youth soccer, to your band, your drill teams, your football teams, not just high school, junior highs are going to want to use it, A, B, and C teams are going to want to use it, and all your sub-varsity, and then you go to soccer season. So there's a whole lot of use and abuse that can happen. So when I go in and talk to athletic directors, I try to make them understand there's going to be a cost, but it's worth taking care of your facilities if you want them to last that 8 to 10 years.
So in the beginning, is that part of the conversation whenever you're talking with athletic directors or superintendents about extending the life of the field? Do you talk to them about what their maintenance capabilities are? Does it take special, expensive equipment to maintain a turf appropriately? Like for most high schools, really looking at that level.
So it depends. Small schools with 1 or 2 fields, everyone gets provided groomers that are really meant like a vacuum cleaner. They keep the field clean. They keep the fibers looking good. They do not move the infill at all. So this is what some people think is, well, I've been grooming my field with the thing they gave me, thinking that's all it needs. And no, that's keeping it looking good, while at the same time your infill's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. It takes your company, your turf company with much bigger machinery to come, and people who know how to use that machinery to get that infill level each year. So yearly releveling of infill is really, really important.
Okay, and that should be done by a specialty company. That's not running your Hoover over it.
These warranties, of course, if I'm the warranty guy, and I feel for all these partners we work with in turf, because they're probably cheering for me right now. You hire your turf company. So when you go make a relationship with a turf company for your turf, whoever you choose, realize you're making a relationship that's going to last at least the full length of that turf. And you need to be working with them each year to be the ones to come and do that. That's also tied into the warranty being effective. So yeah, sometimes people are like, oh, just call Joe down the street. He's got one of these things, have him do it. That's a bad idea. It's super trained, super specialized, and also just tied into the warranty that your turf company is the one doing that maintenance. And then together you make sure that field lasts. I've seen schools who really do maintenance well, and they've been out to 13, 14, 15 years on a field, or the school down the road who doesn't do any maintenance, they're replacing after 7 years. You can almost double the length of just by being cautious on the maintenance. Now, again, it does get into the degree of use too. If someone's going to play on it morning till night and another guy only plays on it once a day, all those factors come in, but maintenance is huge. And we try to coach all these schools. When it comes to the machinery, I've got big schools out there that now have 30 turf fields. Well, their budget can afford $100,000 or $150,000 piece of equipment that gives them maybe the ability to go do some of that leveling on their own. But for the most part, it's a good idea just to work with your turf company, rely on their expertise to do that for you.
Is really at the end of the day, we're doing this to make sure that we've got safe facilities for our schools and that they've got a chance to really have their best support. They can play like a champion. But thinking about those student athletes, do they have a different experience on an engineered field?
Well, it just depends. So when you're not engineering a field, it just means, okay, somebody, going back to the beginning of turf, the founder of the turf, we won't get into names, but the first company to bring turf to America was basically controlled by a lawyer, which I'm sure he was a great lawyer, but he wasn't a very good engineer. He's dead now, so I'll talk about him. And it was a cookie cutter approach as well, kind of a like one approach fits all. Well, anyone in the design world knows there's never such thing as one design fits all. It's actually heinous to kind of think that way. Because, yeah, maybe it does or maybe it doesn't. Well, when I'm spending millions of dollars, I don't really want to be maybe it does or maybe it doesn't. I want for sure for it to work. So everything has to be custom designed to the site, every job has to be specifically designed. Well, that takes all the technology of engineering. It takes all the technology of land surveyors, takes all the technology of geotechnical engineers, takes all the technology of civil and sports engineers. It takes all the technology of materials testers. All these things are critical. So now look, I went and spent $1 million. Yes, I had to spend another 10% to make sure this is going to last me 100 years. But is trying to save 10% worth a 50-50 flip that maybe you're going to be spending another $1 million with all the political fallout that comes with that? Well, of course, nobody wants that.
You were talking about an experience for the student athletes. And what I see is society is one that's going to go where I have opportunity. And what we've seen in Texas, even from the smallest school with maybe 100 kids to the school that has 12,000 kids, people are opting to put in these artificial turf fields. The reason is if I don't have something that everybody else has, I'm apt to say I am willing to pick up and move to a school district that has great facilities or better than I have, so my child will have an opportunity. And we're seeing more and more in Texas that at every level, most schools are putting in turf fields, probably because of community pressure. So again, there's the expectation from parents. There's what the students want. They want the opportunity to play on these turf fields, if that's what your question is. And then, again, as a community, we want people to stay. So we're willing to pay for these facilities. And we're seeing schools that have 40, 50-year-old facilities all of a sudden investing And I think that's the key word, is investing. You're investing in your facilities so you can invest in your students.
Well, I missed the question. I got lost in the answer too. You asked how engineering affects students, and I was kind of looking at the more longevity of the project. When it comes to students, engineering gets into what am I giving you not today, but for that 10-year haul. Every field looks really, really good on day one, or no one would ever kind of accept it. A year later, are you getting undulations? This happens to fields. Are you getting places where it's going to kick the ball up in the air where it shouldn't? Are you getting a place where it can actually be an ankle roller when it shouldn't? There's also questions of just, is it even kind of designed for the sport? The way you design turf for football is not at all the way you design turf for baseball or softball. Even on a baseball and softball field, the way you design it for the warning track is different than the way you design it for the grass, or the way you design it for the infield, and the way you design it for what they call the high traffic areas. There's 4 different designs that have to go into a baseball and softball field. So if you don't understand all that, you're going to get probably a pretty good looking field, but it's not going to perform the way they want. The students are going to have to almost be adjusting how they play to play with it. So much different experience of just throwing something down, or something one design fits all, versus something that's more custom. We even sit with coaches, coach by coach, on an infield of a baseball field, and it depends on how fast he wants a ball to go. You can make a ball go slower, or you can make a ball go faster. On a football field, you can make a field more for speed, or you can make a field more for, you might say, the cushion of it. So understanding the school, the coach, the expectation, all this goes into a custom design that ends up resulting in what the kids end up playing on and experiencing.
Well, okay, I love that. That kind of leads to this next question that I have heard a lot of conversation about lately, sort of referencing back, John, to the fact that in some of these smaller school districts, they are using the field across multiple sports. And Jeff, I was looking through a couple of the projects that we had done lately, and I noticed a couple fields that are specifically designed to provide a base for multiple sports. And I thought that's a really interesting way to give the access to those better fields, but still serve a wider variety. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that might go into, or how you might approach it, because that seemed like a good option even for some of the schools with younger students.
Yeah, and smaller schools, budgets being tight. If you look at a new high school, the big standard of Texas, there's a turf stadium, football field, there's a turf baseball field, there's a turf softball field, there's a turf practice field, there's an indoor turf facility. That's a lot of turf. Yeah, we've come up, even going back to, I guess this all started in Rockwall when we had a situation where under a bond, they said we're going to go buy new property and do a new baseball, softball practice facility. Inflation hits 3 years later. When they get to that part of the bond, they can't even afford the property anymore. The bond money is not there to do what they originally did. They looked at us and said, well, are there some other solutions? Looking at their school, they had one practice grass field, but I'm like, well, it's a football field, it's a soccer field. Well, yeah, it's also the band field, it's also the PT, it's also everything else. We just said, well, what if turf is turf, and what if we design it so it's got the baseball infield and the softball infield, and as much as we can. It had some car dealerships and restaurants around it. What if we put nets all the way around it to keep all the balls, really tall nets, 40-foot nets, and make it a baseball and softball field practice facility? But because it had so many other prior uses, we'll put the football back in there, we'll put the soccer back in there, the band can still use it, we'll still use it as the discus throwing field. It ended up with 5 different things going on. We also worked with the pole company for the nets and the light people. We didn't have room for all this stuff. We had to get creative and say, you, Mr. Light Guy, will you make us a custom one light to fit on this particular pole? And they all said, yeah, we can do that. So we ended up with a really cool facility that has nets all the way around it, lights all the way around it, and 5 different sports that can play night or day. And it just came out of necessity. In doing that, everyone loves it. They'll say, oh, we want one of those. We're learning with small schools, same thing. Well, they're not going to get the money for, $20-something million worth of turf. If they can take a $2 million fund and go make something that works for baseball, softball, soccer, all these different sports, well, that's what they need. Well, you got to get pretty creative in how you do that. And those are the designs we've been coming up with lately, where literally you have competition softball, competition baseball, competition football and soccer, all on one field. I think that's what you saw in that.
Yeah.
And I think these turf companies are, through research and design, are coming up with different fibers where you can soccer and football, they're just close enough to be a cross where you're not slipping and sliding versus having the grip and all that. So every year we're having to do more and more research on the newer products. And then so those are out there for schools as well. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done. So because again, as an athletic director, I want my field yesterday and I want to be able to play on it. But you've got to, again, educate them on, well, who else is going to be using this field? What's not best just for you, but for your soccer and everyone else. So
What adjustments do we need to make it appropriate to be a multi-sport facility? Well, I just think that conversation, I love the fact that you guys are getting really innovative in how you're approaching it, trying to get the best solution for each district. So speaking about advances, it does seem like there have been a lot of advances in this market as far as product goes. So what are some of the innovations that you're seeing as far as turf or turf system?
They never end, and we love that part of it. It keeps it interesting, that the original field we did back in Abilene, that turf was, good. It was green, but boy, it had a lot of problems. I've enjoyed watching these manufacturers come up with, better products. I've had a few clients where I've said, yeah, you didn't get a field for 20 years, but you kind of were lucky. You missed a lot of the high prices and the try this
learning,
the learning curve of the whole industry. And so today there's amazing products out there, beautiful products. There's something for everything too. Like I say, you kind of got a lot of products to choose from because there's a lot of different applications. One thing that is right now the most recent that we're excited about is we got to have shade over a field. At least in the South, they just passed new regulations for safety because of heat. If it's a certain heat temperature with the humidity involved, it's kind of technical how they do it, but you have to shut down practice. You can't practice. If there's a lightning bolt, of course, within a certain distance, you can't practice. Lots of schools are saying, we can't have that shut our program down. So there's a lot of indoor practice facilities that everyone loves. Wouldn't we all love a full football field in a building like the colleges have? Well, some schools can afford that. Some schools never can. So the latest craze started over in Marshall. Let's just put the roof over. Well, we've been doing some of those, more and more of those, very, very popular. But the prices, COVID, whatever, inflation, it even made those be almost prohibitively in cost. Well, we just network. And right now there's newer technologies to skin those buildings with a better looking, I think, and better options for having a roof over your head that come at a much lesser price, basically half the price of what these metal buildings have been costing. So that's new, that's brand new, but we're excited with it, and we're about to go start talking to a lot of clients about that. That stuff happens all the time. We don't half the time even know where it's coming from because we're not the ones developing it. We just make sure we keep a good relationship with all the guys who are in the construction side and especially in the manufacturing sides. They come to us. We have that blessing, you might say, of we'll get a lot of phone calls. We want to show you this. We want to show you that. And it's fun to go and say, oh, yeah. And a lot of times we'll say to these guys, do you realize what you've just done is actually a better fit over here? And so there's a lot of collaboration that goes into bringing products to market and making more options for schools, more options for kids, more options to make money go further and products go longer and look better and perform better. So that's a fun part of the job.
It's come a long way because, again, once at the beginning, indoor turf was lay down some concrete, put a padding, put turf on top. Sounds good, looks good until
Carpet.
Until you play on it. Until you got sweat and you got people getting sick and throwing up, and how do you clean it and what do you do? So the design for even indoor, we build it just like an outdoor, even if it has a roof over it. But so water can go through and it can breathe and all that. Another thing Jeff didn't talk about, but again,
there's so many stories. He's referring to 2003, the first let's do a turf indoor facility for a high school, at least that I knew of in the state, came into existence. And because you're new, you don't know what you're doing. And this fantastic facility, great big concrete floor. We made sure the shock pad was in there and the turf is in there. When it's all done, everyone's just as thrilled as could be. But I get a call 6 months later, Jeff, we had a kid get sick. And he's made a big mess. What do we do? I'm like, oh boy, you're going to have to call the turf company to come cut it open and clean it all up and put it all back together. Well, that's a couple $1,000s. So the very next one who called up, I just said, okay, we got to rethink this. And at the same time, budgets are always tight. Well, how much did we pay for that concrete floor that we actually don't even want? It's hurtful to us. Why don't we do it like we do an outdoor field where you can just flush a lot of water through there like a rainstorm would do? Oh yeah, I don't know. And then by the time we said let's do it, we're also looking like, hey, that saved $1 million. So we just learned, hey, it's custom designing for what we really need benefits in so many ways, because now an indoor facility costs a whole lot less to begin with, and you can clean it up and you can do all the maintenance and all these kind of things. And so we just done them all like that since then.
So it sounds like a resource for a school to be able to have somebody come in and really evaluate, not be tied to any particular system, but really be able to get down into the dirt, so to speak, and figure out what is going to be best, what's going to perform and match up with their maintenance and resources. That is something that you guys are.
And we've actually recently, Hayes, again, I'm a track guy, so when we come talking about track surfaces, you got different types of surfaces for track, but we actually are talking about the system underneath the track with like we do tennis courts. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit different, and it's pretty new, cost effective. I think we're looking at that. But if you do it this way, you got a system that will last for...
Yeah, so he's talking about post-tension concrete, which no one ever thought would be possible for a 400-meter track. Well, one, companies learned how to do it. So again, they bring that to us, and there's going to be places where it applies and places where it doesn't. But yeah, just an incredible option. Like an asphalt track base, you're lucky, you can go get 25, 30 years out of it. Well, of course, post-tension concrete could last 100 years. So just options, many options. Going back to why would someone come to a consultant? Well, it's just like this. If I need to, I guess, navigate the oceans, I'm really going to need a good skipper. I'm not going to get in that boat by myself. Pretty sure I won't last a day out there.
Go with the wind.
Yeah. So all construction is like this. Everything is really an expertise one way or the other. When you're going to design something, it's super important that you have experts at design. You don't want someone who's been designing lots of roads to suddenly come in and take on a turf. You don't want someone who's been designing a lot of turfs to come on and take on the road. We all have our disciplines to practice in. So 25 years, we've just realized what we wanted to become didn't really exist, or at least I couldn't find it anywhere. We've had to develop it. There's now a lot of companies that do it, and God bless them. We just say that we're here as a resource that's been kind of the tip of the spear of this whole synthetic turf industry. There's a whole lot of firsts that we've had to face as we've done 500 or 600 fields over 25 years, whether it's water under a field in New Orleans, whether it's a field that inflates like a balloon, which we haven't talked about, but it can happen. And it's such an easy fix to keep that from happening if you know what you're doing. To you want something that's not going to just be good for 10 years and start showing the cracks in 15 and you have to rebuild. So many examples that you really have to know what you're doing. You really have to know what applies and what doesn't. You got to know what to do and what not to do, which is only gained by experience. I to this day wish there was some college, because we now hire people to work in our department
and train them up.
I so wish there was a sports engineering college that taught everybody this, that we could just hire. It doesn't exist. We have to go find the best civil engineer, come in wherever they're doing, and we just understand it's going to take us it's going to take us years to teach them all that they need to learn. And I guess that just speaks to the fact that there is a lot involved in being an expert in this industry that we offer people.
I've got just a couple more questions as we kind of are getting to the end of it. This first one is for you, John. When you are talking to a superintendent, what's some of the advice that you would give that superintendent if they're starting down this path or considering down this path?
Be careful. Because as a superintendent, you're pushing politics. You're responsible to the board members who are responsible to their community. And so as a superintendent, if you're going to start going down this road, one, do you have the support for this project or type of project? Do your research, because again, if the neighboring school has this facilities, which they probably do because that's why you're looking at it, know that what it's done over here is beautiful and it may work, may not work for you. It may cost more because of your soil and your situation and if you're landlocked or not, your permitting within your city. So there's so many things you need to really do your research. And so then you bring an expert in like Jeff that has that kind of background. So again, do you have support for it? Do your research. And then
make sure you get a consultant you can trust.
Make sure you get a consultant you can trust. And don't just listen to your athletic director. And I say that in jest.
As an athletic director.
As an athletic director, because your athletic directors are talking to people who have a turf field, and they've been sold a bill of goods. A lot of times it's really good, but sometimes, again, it may not be best for you. So be open to, because there are several good contractors out there, and they can all do a good job. But again, what's best for
your
you?
system.
Yeah, because, it is about being responsible for the taxpayers' dollars. And a field might cost you, say, $1.5 million. But if you're not careful and you spend $2.5 million, then people are going to start questioning why. And you need to have those answers. Again, that goes back to doing the research. So.
My advice to every school would be, do not treat your sports facility project differently than all your other projects. And that's the number one mistake I see school after school after school making. Sports is more fun, it's more interesting, people are more involved. It's kind of the buzz type of a project. And I always say, well, that would be the one project you for sure then do not want to cut any corners on. Because if it goes wrong, it's the talk of the town. It's the coffee shop discussion every morning of what's going on that project. And just, if you're going to build a high school with a certain set of steps, well, guess what? Those exact same steps actually apply to the field, to the track, to the tennis courts, to the other parts of your campus of what you're doing.
And I would also tell those superintendents, there's plenty of news clippings out there that says, hey, this school opened their field, and 6 months later, or even in mid-season, it's shifted, and they've got wavy lines, or they've got issues, and they can't finish the season on it. Do the research on what systems out there are working and not working. I always say, every AD in every community loves to see a beautiful field with the graphics and the design. And I always tell the superintendents, get that consultant. It's because it may look pretty on top, but if you haven't taken care of what's underneath, it doesn't matter. So I always tell those superintendents, and again, I keep saying as an educator, a lot of superintendents are not being proactive. They're being reactive because of the pressure that they're getting. Get this done, get this done, get this done. Fine, get it done. But take a step back and make sure that you have an expert on your team, be it Jeff Bresee or somebody else that has experience. Have that person on your team. Too many schools are skipping that, and they're paying the price.
That sounds like solid advice. I so much appreciate what you guys do. I love the work that you turn out. I follow a lot along the stories of the schools where you're serving. I see the before and after pictures, and I I'm really, really proud of the work that you guys turn out. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that this has been engaging for our listeners. If there's some way that we can help you in the future with your sport field engineering needs, please reach out to us at ceieng.com and look at our website for additional details and contact information. Hope you guys have a great day.